Did you know your studio room may actually be tricking your ears into making bad mixing decisions? If you've ever taken your mix out into a different environment, or maybe you listen to it in your car and it just doesn't sound good, doesn't sound the way it sounded in your room, it's probably because your room is tricking you. I know this sounds terrifying, but in this video, I'm going to share with you what you can do to make sure you set up your room for success so you're no longer being fooled and you're making accurate mixing decisions. So what do you do to fix this problem? Do you do this?
Bad studio, bad!
No, actually, not quite. Others will say that you need acoustic treatment.
Acoustic treatment!
So you need to put up foam and stuff on your walls in your room. So do you actually need this, or is this actually just a big scam? Well, in this video, we'll look at, do you actually need acoustic treatment? And if you do have acoustic treatment, what do you do with it? How do you go about treating your room? If you do want to treat your room, what do you do? And what are the different steps you can do that? And I'll also share with you how you can correct your room and have it sound as accurate as possible on a very, very minimal budget. So be sure to watch all the way to the end. Hey, I'm Reagan Ram with Orpheus Audio Academy, helping you make better music and grow a fan base online. And this is actually video 2 in my Saddest Studio Ever series, where I'm walking you through how to go about knowing nothing about music production, how to play an instrument, music theory, anything, no gear, nothing, and to going from that to creating and releasing an amazing track from scratch. So this is a multi-part series, so be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of these videos that come out. And I also want to have a free gift for you. It's my free mixing checklist. This walks you through a proven step-by-step system that you can follow so that you can mix your tracks so that they sound professional and they sound great. And also includes some really handy cheat sheets in there on how to compress and EQ some of your main instruments. So be sure to grab that. It's completely free in the description below, or go to orpheusaudioacademy.com/mixing checklist. All right, so how do we actually set up your room for success so it's not tricking your ears and you're getting the best results possible? Well, number one, let's look at the difference between soundproofing and acoustic treatment, because this is something I kind of thought were the same thing when I first got started, but they're actually very different. And let's look at kind of what the differences are between these very quickly. So soundproofing, if you want to go the route of soundproofing your studio, then you're going to have to look like this guy here. You're going to have to, wear white tennis shoes and tuck your shirt into your jeans. Well, you're going to have to tear apart your walls and put stuff into your walls, right? Different materials, different extra installation, right? You have to probably get a different door. There's a lot of stuff you have to do, because the difference between soundproofing and acoustic treatment is that soundproofing involves the reduction or prevention of sounds entering or leaving your room, which might be important, right? If you're in the city, or like in an apartment or something, but then if you're in an apartment, you can't really tear apart the walls. But if you're in an environment where you have like sound ordinances and you're worried about your sound being too loud and bothering your neighbors, then you might need to do some soundproofing, or alternatively, you have lots of sounds coming into your room. I could use some soundproofing in my room, to be honest, because I've got noises from outside coming in. I detailed everything about my room and why I call it my saddest studio ever in episode 0, which is kind of the introduction to this series. But the whole point of this series is to show you that you don't need a perfect anything to make great music from home. So the other thing you're going to want to do, though, is acoustic treatment. So creating the most accurate, most linear listening environment as possible. Linear meaning like what you hear is what you get, that you're not losing frequencies. Frequencies aren't escaping your room, or they're not building up, making you think there's more or less of a frequency than there actually is. So most likely, soundproofing is probably not where you want to do, but you are probably going to want to do some acoustic treatment. But how do you know if you actually need acoustic treatment? Well, short answer is yes, it is kind of necessary. It is necessary in order to create an objective listening environment. But I'll talk about in a second how you can also just remove the environment altogether with headphones. So what you want to realize is that sound, you can be thought of as a series of different balls. So you have like the high frequencies, those can be represented by like super bouncy balls. You throw them at the wall, and what they're going to bounce up and down all over the place, go crazy. So that's what you're going to have with those high frequencies. So that can cause them to build up in your room, so you're hearing more high frequency or not hearing them as accurately. And so you're going to make mixing decisions that, maybe your mixes sound dull because you think that there's more high frequencies than there actually are. Then you have your mid-range frequencies, and those can be thought of like a volleyball, maybe like a slightly deflated volleyball, and you kind of throw that at the wall, and it kind of just hits and then falls into the floor, not a lot of bouncing around. And then you have the low frequencies, right? Those are the biggest waves, and those actually can be thought of as like throwing a bowling ball at your wall. They're actually going to do some damage. They're going to punch a hole that if you throw a bowling ball at the wall, and it's going to actually transmit through the wall. And so that's what happens with those bass frequencies. And that's why if you're outside of someone's car or outside of a building and they're playing music, what do you hear? You just hear the boom, 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 boom. You just hear the bass frequencies. You don't hear all the high frequencies because those are either being absorbed or kind of reflected in the room. But those bass frequencies actually transmit. So that could lead to you ending up with like muddy mixes. If those bass frequencies are leaving your room and you're mixing, you're like, I don't hear enough bass. Let me turn up the bass in my track so I can hear it. Another thing that can contribute to this is just not listening back to your track at the right volume level, but I'll talk about that later in a second. So the acoustic treatment is going to kind of try and to alleviate these problems. So you can put up panels that are absorbers that kind of absorb those high frequencies. So you're just hearing the frequencies coming out of your speakers, not hearing all those extra reflections and reverberations. You can put up bass traps that trap the bass in the room so it stays in the room so you're hearing all the bass. So those are different things you can do, but that can be very expensive. So another option is just listening on headphones, which I'll cover more in a little bit. So, but it's good to keep in mind that without an objective listening environment, you can't trust your ears, right? So a poor acoustic treatment is likely the culprit when it comes to poor translation of your sound to other systems, such as in your car or in a stereo in different places. So it can be very frustrating. Like, what's wrong with me? I thought I kind of knew what I was doing. I'm making these changes and adjustments, and it sounds good. Then I listen to these other places, and it just doesn't sound good. And that can be incredibly frustrating. And you think, what's wrong with me? You get, what's wrong with you? But there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your room is fooling you. So bad room. So what are some of the issues that acoustic treatment can fix? Well, it can fix frequency buildup. So this occurs mainly in the corners of your room, especially for bass. Just, you can also like walk around your room while music is playing and see what you notice. There's also these things called standing waves, where waves can like bounce off the sidewalls of your room and hit each other, and they actually will cancel each other out. And that's crazy because then you're just missing entire frequencies altogether. It can sound really weird, which is why if you're going to be mixing in like a kind of a boxy room, which most rooms in our houses are boxy, definitely don't put your listening spot in like the middle of your room. You want to be kind of in the first third of your room. If you divide your room up into thirds, you want to be right at that like 33% mark in your room. Again, I'll get more into detail on all this later, how to actually set up your room. So the other thing is you have reverb, so sounds bouncing around the room. So acoustic treatment can help with that. I have acoustic treatment I'm going to be setting up. I've got like foam that companies have given me for free in exchange for like video reviews. And I've got a little bit on my walls just so I could do those videos. But I've been holding off on like putting up stuff in my room because I wanted to do the Saddest Studio Ever series. I've been waiting for years to do this and neglecting my room, but I've never gotten around to doing this series. But I'm finally doing it. And to show you that you can actually still make great music even without that acoustic treatment, it's more difficult. But there are some things you can do to mitigate that. But sticking with this, uneven frequency response. So the other thing is, again, you're going to be hearing stuff at different levels that aren't right, and that prevents you from making accurate mixing decisions. This is the studio that I learned music production in, or is actually part of a college where I got my audio engineering degree. This is called Unity Gain Recording Studio. It's in Fort Myers. There's me, and there's my instructor, Anthony, who is actually the one who built this studio, and he's also the instructor for the college. And you can see this room. Number one, it's not a box. This is the control room or the listening environment. You can see those windows there. The one on the right, can't see my mouse. One on the right, though, is a vocal booth, which was completely insulated. So you had foam on every surface, and there's even like a little music stand in there where, you know, if the singer had lyrics or something, he would put a towel over that. So even that metal mixing stand wouldn't cause reflections and get into the microphone. So that's great for recording, but you don't want to do that in your recording studio because then it's going to be too dead and too much is going to be absorbed, and that's not great either. Then that big window out there is a larger room that he had where people could play instruments. There's even like a really cool rock wall. I can probably put up a picture to show that was handmade, that they put together to help liven up the room. It's kind of like acted like a diffuser, which I'll talk about more later on in this video. But you can see this control room. He's got the walls and the ceiling are all treated with this like acoustic material. He's got some hard surfaces in there, so it's not completely dead. And he had a hardwood floor and stuff, and you can see the console there. But the biggest thing was the room wasn't square, because that way you don't have sound waves bouncing off and hitting each other and canceling each other out. It's kind of like moving stuff around. So that's ideal, but you're probably not going to find that in your home studio, because the ideal studio is a room within a room, where you take a room and you build another room inside of it that's shaped like this, which is what he has here, because those aren't the actual, there's like a big gap. It even has like a closet in the back you can't really see here, but you open the door and you can kind of see where the wall of the control room ends and the actual wall of the building starts, and there's a big gap there. So that's pretty cool. He's actually has a second studio that he was building, and he was showing me around this, and he's actually has all the wires from his mixing console and his gear that all actually goes under the floor and back to that other desk behind him there that he can then plug into gear or and so on. So pretty cool, pretty elaborate, and that can be pretty intimidating, but you don't need a huge fancy studio like this to create great quality music from home. So that's the good news. But just kind of want to show you big picture, like kind of what the pro studio looks like and what we're trying to accomplish in our home studio. With that in mind, there's 5 different levels of acoustic treatment. I learned this from Musician on a Mission. I just want to give credit to them. So this is cool. So the first level is just really maximizing your position and your placement. So where you're actually sitting in your room listening plays a part, and how your speakers are aligned plays a part. Then you have level 2, which is creating a reflection-free zone just around your listening spot, your sweet spot where you're sitting and listening. And then third level is adding bass traps to your room. 4th level is diffusion. And then finally, a full room treat. All right, so level 1. So if you're on a super budget, which is kind of what this whole series is about, is how to create music using just budget equipment, stock plugins, not a lot of knowledge, not a lot of money, you're probably going to be here at level 1. And this is kind of where I'm at. I'm at like level 1.2, I think. I'm not quite level 2 myself, just because of
budget restrictions.
But you want your speakers at this level to form an equilateral triangle with your head. And right, so go back to what, 9th grade geometry to remember what an equilateral triangle is, where every side is the same length. And you want to place the speakers to be at the same height as your ears, right? So you want to have those speakers pointing at your ears. And I kind of have that for my desk. I'm a little bit above them, but usually I'm more sitting back. So, but my speakers can be raised up. So that's what you want to try to do. You want your speakers separated from your desk with foam or books or speaker stands. So I'm just using books. I have them stacked up on this book, so those books will kind of absorb the sound that's coming out of the speaker, so it's not traveling through your desk and rattling and all that. Then you want your speakers positioned according to the manufacturer's instructions, so make sure to pay attention to that. So some speakers are supposed to be vertical, some are supposed to be horizontal, mine are supposed to be vertical. And if they are going to be on their sides, you generally want to have them with the tweeters out. Now, if you watch my interview that I did with my instructor, Anthony, who owns the studio, Anthony Iannucci, a lot of people were like leaving comments saying he's not a real professional because he had his tweeters of his monitors facing in. And so that's the thing with audio and music production in general, is there really are no hard set rules, because everything is subjective, and how you set up things really depends on a lot of different factors in your room. And so Anthony is someone that really measures his room, and he found that it was best for him to have the tweeters facing in. So I actually asked him about this. I said, hey, question for you. Some people have commented that your monitors are positioned with the tweeters facing in, when a lot of the advice out there says to face them out. What was your thinking with that setup? He said, Reagan, interesting question. I'm not sure if you're speaking of my Yamaha NS10Ms. Yes, I was. If so, I have tried them both ways and find the way I presently have them translate to be truer. By having my full range tones on the outside, a certain amount of blow-by occurs as my body doesn't absorb as much of the cones being further apart. The room plays a part in my frequency decisions, as it should, because the full range cone carries a wider bandwidth of frequency. The stereo image is wider, exposing greater detail. I believe a detailed understanding of that room's acoustic behavior would be mandatory, as the engineer is making judgment calls to EQ a mix based on what is heard. Monitor positions are carefully measured, typically with a laser, so the flat plane surface face intersects at the ideal listening position in the analyzed control room. So that's a lot of mumbo jumbo to really just mean that he has meticulously analyzed his room with lasers and different microphone systems. And for him and his specific room, because every room is different, it's better for him to have the tweeters facing in. Now, if you're a complete beginner, that's really overwhelming. So don't worry about any of that. Common rule of thumb is just place the tweeters facing out. So I recommend that you go ahead and do that for your room, because that's probably best for you. But as you progress and gain more knowledge and you get the tools to be able to do that, that's something to think about down the road. But don't worry about that right now. Don't let that bog you down just getting started. I just wanted to address that because I've gotten a lot of comments about that. Now, the fifth step for level 1 is you want to have your listening position again lengthwise in the middle of the side wall. So basically, if you have like a rectangular room, you want your listening position facing one of the shorter walls versus one of the longer walls. And you want to have it be like in the middle of those. And you want your listening to be about 33% from that front wall. So again, if the front wall is behind the camera for me, and so if I were to divide my room up into thirds, I want to be kind of right at that like first third mark, which is about where I'm at. Something else to think about with level 1 placement and position is your room is still going to have some serious problems, even if you've got it placed right like I have. So you should at least invest in a room calibration EQ software. So that's where Sonar works. Sound ID reference comes in. It's great, and it's what I use. Here's like a quick little behind the scenes of where I use this to set up my room, and just a quick little review of the software, because I think it's really great. And at the very least, right, if you're not going to, it's the kind of the first thing you should get if you can't invest in acoustic treatment. This tool is designed to help you do is kind of tune your room, correct your room, so you're hearing a more accurate picture of your audio. And so you can see it here. And so this listened to my room. It came with a microphone. And it gave me a software to just tell me where to hold that microphone. So if you get it with the microphone, it comes in this box here. So this is what I have right here. Open the box. I've used this multiple times as I've rearranged my room configuration. And so it comes with this microphone and a software. So it will tell you where to hold the microphone in your room as it plays sound from your speakers. And it will listen to your room and create a frequency curve and then correct that. So you can see that's what the result was here. So I have the IK Multimedia iLoud micro monitors. Those are my speakers here. And this is the sound profile that it picked up on. So basically it saw that I was missing a lot of these high frequencies and high mid frequencies. So therefore, when I would be mixing my music, I wouldn't hear enough of those frequencies. So that could cause me to make poor mixing decisions and add, EQ boosts to increase the high frequencies too much. And then when I listen to it in different places, whether it be on headphones or like in a car or something, it would sound a little too harsh. And then over here as well, it was missing some bass. So we had to boost up some bass here. So you can kind of see this frequency curve now. And so it gives you this plugin. So this is what I just put on my stereo out here in my digital audio workstation. And so that creates an EQ curve across my whole project. So as I'm mixing, I can make accurate decisions. And then when I go to export the track, I can just turn off this plugin just like that. Really important if you're wanting, to make accurate mixing decisions while you are producing your music. So if you're a music producer, I highly recommend Sound ID reference. You definitely should get something like that to tune your room so you can get the best results possible out of your studio, even if you don't have the best environment, right? This is especially important if you don't have a lot of acoustic treatment in your studio like I have. But even if you do have a pro studio, right? I used to work in a pro studio that was built custom, perfectly designed, it still had some issues and it still needed a system like this to EQ and tune the room to get the most linear response possible. So this is kind of what we're talking about with that equilateral triangle with your head. And I got a measuring tape and measured everything out, so that I'm good. So then level 2 is where you kind of set up the reflection-free zone around your listening position. So you want to treat the walls on either side of you and the ceiling directly above you. Now this is why I say I'm kind of at 1.5, because I can't treat the ceiling above me because I'm not able to currently invest in the materials I would need, like cloud mounting acoustic panels to have above me. Also, there's a fan up there. I have to take that all down. I'm not able to do it at the time. So on either side of me, I just put up a couple of mattresses. So those are standing in as my acoustic foam, since I don't have a lot of that. If you can't spend anything, then just throw up some mattresses or thick blankets on either side of your listening position, because those are the most important sides your sound's going to be reflecting the most, because that's where your ears are on either side of. So those are kind of the first places you want to treat in your room. And so here's what we're talking about, putting up some acoustic panels. Like you see on the left here, it's much better than just the foam, because foam mostly just absorbs the higher frequencies and don't get much of the mids. And then here's like the cloud mounting that you'd put on the ceiling. I did not know they were going to shake like that. Interesting. Then you have level 3, which is where you add bass traps to your room. So bass traps prevent bass from leaving your room, traps it in, hence the name. And then you want to invest in some bass traps for the front corners of your room first, at the very least. And then if you have a larger budget, also get some for the back corners as well. And so they literally just wedge into the corners. Some are kind of, triangle shaped to fit into the corners of your room. Some just are flat panels that you just put caddy corner basically across the corner there. So you can see here's an example of what bass traps look like on the left, what a bass trap is, and what it looks like in a room, how they're filling up those corners there. And then level 4 of acoustic treatment is diffusion. So this is where you might add a diffuser to your room. So this reduces the intensity of sound reflections by scattering them rather than absorbing them. It can give a more make your room more energetic, not as dead. So it keeps your room from sounding too dead, which is not what you want. You're not trying to absorb all the sound in your room. And then you want to add it typically to the back wall of your room. And you can get away with using something else like a nice bookshelf, or maybe you hang some guitars up, something that's going to kind of diffuse and reflect those frequencies without causing them to bounce around too much. So then the final level is obviously a full room treatment where you're doing everything. So for more complete control, you fully treat your room. You still need software again to EQ your room. And then this is something I would recommend, like working with an expert. Like there's different companies out there. One is like GIK Acoustic. I'm not an affiliate from them or anything. I haven't worked with them before, but you see a lot of people using them. So many videos out there. If you see those kind of decorative acoustic panels, those come from GIK. And you can actually reach out to them and send them pictures of your room and the dimensions and stuff, and they'll give you suggestions on what you should get and where to put them based on your budget. So that's something cool. That's pretty cool that I would check out. So if this feels overwhelming at all, don't let it feel overwhelming. You don't need a fancy room or equipment to get started making great music. Look at my room. Like I got a little bit of foam on that door there and like a panel there. And then I've got a couple mattresses. So I don't have anything crazy going on. And so you don't need a whole lot either to get started making music from home. And I've been putting out music for a while, and I've gotten lots of compliments on my music and say it sounds good. So is it the best music? No. Is it the best? It could be. I'd probably be easier if I had a better room. I do eventually want to improve, but don't let that stop you from getting started or creating and releasing music, because it doesn't have to. So just get started and then improve later. Don't be overwhelmed at all. So let me know in the comments below, what is your biggest struggle when it comes to setting up your home studio or your equipment, and I'll do my best to help you out. And by the way, if you're really serious about creating music and producing music and putting out pro quality music, and you want to actually be proud of your music and put out music that stacks up with your favorite artists, then I have a full end-to-end course that walks through how to do this. It teaches you how to go about setting all this stuff up, getting your room ready to go, the mindsets you need to be successful. It walks through how to actually start producing and writing songs and it goes in depth on how to mix and master your own music as well. So this is my complete end-to-end course system that shares everything that I've learned from being in college and years of experience. So if you want to learn more about this, the course is called Radio Ready Record. And so you can check this out by going to orpheusaudioacademy.com/RRR. And I'll also have a link in the description below where you can check out this course. So highly recommend this. It's my complete system and framework for going about creating a song. Kind of takes this Saddest Studio Ever series and it's like on steroids and goes much farther into more detail on how to do all this. So definitely check that out. And if you're ready for the next video where I walk through how to actually go about starting writing a song, even if you don't know music theory, even if you don't play an instrument, even if you don't know anything about much at all about your DAW software or anything, you can still write music. I'll show you how to do it in that video. So click on the box on the screen right now to go check out part 3 of this series. I'll see you over there.